and we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Zone 2 Talk. Today, we have a guest who comes from the happiest country in the world. Uh, he has been an IT admin since 1996. He's a specialist in Microsoft Windows troubleshooting. He's a security expert. He has been Microsoft MVP, most valuable professional for decades. Uh, he's a world class trainer and a kind of a person who can explain Windows technology in a way that makes you forget that you're not actually listening to a lecture, but you are in a stand up show, at least from my point of view. Welcome to the podcast, Sami.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very good description of me. I hope
Like,
so.
thanks a lot. What I've observed, I've been a student of yours, or I've been a subscriber of yours on your portal. And what I've observed is humor is at the center of all your talks. Um, and you have some really great lines like admin rights are not human rights. I had to like laugh for half an hour just after listening to that. And you have lines like people learn more if they are awake. I have weighed all my certificates and it's 1.2 kgs worth of paper. Like those are some of the lines that have stuck with me, and it's hilarious. So humor is at the center of all your talks. Is it something that you picked up while growing up, or is it something that you do as to calm people down and then focus on the actual stuff that you are going to talk, which might not be very catchy sometimes?
Yeah, I think in a way, I think everything dates back to the fact that I'm an only child, so I don't have any siblings, and my cousins are all like 10 years younger or 10 years older than me, which meant that every family gathering or Christmas party, I basically had the stage all to myself. So I think I kind of like grew up being the comedian in that sense. Um, I've been teaching these topics, and as you said, very well described, it's sometimes relatively, let's not say boring, but like not that entertaining as a technical topic itself. So then I kind of started in the beginning to just notice that I felt a lot better, at least morally, if I would be able to like keep people awake and entertain them and have them at least learn like, let's say 50% of what I wanted, compared to having a lecture where I would just have this monotonic sound. And I suffered so much myself listening to sessions like that. And I went out, I couldn't concentrate, I hadn't learned anything. And then I started to figure out that I can easily see that my students are, at the end, they learn more this way. So some people will come to a session and they will be like, well, I was expecting a technical lecture where I get hardcore stuff 100%, and now this was like half of the time just comedy. But then I just started like calculating that if I do the traditional way, people learn like 10%. If I do it this way, they learn 50%. So I'm both happy myself, keeps me awake. Also, I think every instructor who's ever been very successful will agree with the fact that people learn a lot more with stories compared to just pure facts. Our brains are wired in that way that if you have a story and it, like, you now remember those things that you mentioned, those were catchy and they caught your brain caught them and now has recorded them. That's for me to start talking about principle of least privilege and talk about how technically admin rights are bad for your computer, stuff like that, that would not be worth a t-shirt. But these t-shirts I sell a lot, although it's not my main business, is not selling t-shirts. But I mean, a great story is always better than just a
No, but
standard old way.
admin rights are not human rights. I think that's just worthy of a t-shirt. Like people would definitely buy it, and it's pure gold. But do you think that Finland is the happiest country in the world because everyone's full of humor?
Definitely not. I do have like very two very kind of different personalities to me.
Mhm,
Eh,
mhm.
I'm actually quite introvert. Well, actually, my wife would say very introvert. The that's the funny thing, as most people would say that they get more nervous the bigger the audience is. But for me, one of the benefits has always been that that doesn't matter at all to me. I get if I get nervous, I get exactly the same amount of nervousness if I'm facing like 10 people, or like at Ignite, we had 3,500 people in a room. There's no difference to me. But if you put me in a meeting room where we are sitting in a round table with 5 peers and there's no clear setup on who's in control of the situation, then I freak out. I'm sweating and I'm super nervous, because for an introvert, for many of us, the main thing is actually about the control. As long as I control the flow of the whatever kind of event it is, that's fine by me. But when we get into this more of a no clear setup of who's the instructor, who's not,
Mm,
in earlier days, I would do it so that I would just always try to be the sharpest pencil in the box. I would just like be technically so good that I would kind of get my position in the group anyway.
mm,
And now I've like only later on figured out that that actually is it's just about the control. But as a Finn, I think most people are always telling me like, he's the weirdest Finn I ever know because he's actually funny. So I think it's not something that people would kind of associate with Finland. The reason why we are the happiest country in the world for 7 years in a row now is more to basically do about like how satisfied we are with our lives. We have a good education system. We have a very good social security system. So I think it's more to do with what Finland has as a country to offer to its citizens, but I would definitely not think of Finns as having so much humor. And they're a horrible audience many times. I mean, they're like, I love American audiences because people
mm,
interact. They will
mm,
instantly tell you if you're doing good.
mm,
If your jokes are not landing, or if they're inappropriate for the situation, you can read it from their faces. As
mm.
in Finland, many times you have these stone-faced people that don't ask a single question. And I think Mark Rusinovich from Microsoft once put it very well, that he's only seen two countries that he's been in where people ask no questions. So it's Finland and China. But the funny thing is why. And the why there is the interesting part. So in Finland, people don't ask questions because they're so afraid that they might
Mm.
ask a question that makes them look stupid. So they're so afraid of asking a stupid question. Chinese people don't ask you anything, or they don't ask the instructor anything because they're so afraid that the instructor does not know the answer. So the
Oh.
respect is so high to the speaker. They're grown up in this, that if there's like a teacher, the worst thing you could ever do would be to make the teacher lose their face.
Mm.
So it's kind of the end result is the same, but Finnish people are all about themselves and Chinese people are all about the instructor. But
It,
it's called
it's a
cultural differences, and I like audiences that ask questions and are alive and laugh and all that. So that's not something that you would really associate with. And I'm not only talking about Finnish people; I'm in Scandinavian more. So
I,
I
I
don't
have
think it's not to your question. No, it's not the humor. I think it's just all the services that get provided to us, which keep us happy.
And I've also observed that because I've been living in Scandinavia or at least in Denmark for the last 9.5 years. In Denmark, there's a lot of people who are humorous, who are like extremely humorous, and they're very good at sarcastic humor. And from the country that I come from, India, sarcastic humor is almost non-existent.
Hmm.
So for people like me to come to a country where sarcasm is at its peak, it took me a year or two just to understand what is going on. Like people are just yelling at you or just trying to crack jokes, and you're just standing still and not able to understand what's going on. So that is one cultural difference, which I guess it's spread across Scandinavia. It's also
Mm.
I've been to Norway, and people are also highly in favor of sarcasm. And I guess it's same in Finland too, wherein sarcasm would score you some points. And
And so,
you,
sarcasm is one thing that I totally agree what you're saying. And one thing that's a benefit for me is, well, I travel a lot and I do a lot of stuff. So things keep happening to me. And what I've found out lately, especially during the last let's say 5 to 10 years, we currently live in a world where the only real, like really safe form of comedy is actually self irony, which you can always see in my talks because people don't take it very well if you are on a pedestal somewhere saying things like, hey, I have never used admin rights. I know you are, but I don't. But they'd rather hear it from a person who's also capable of self-irony and capable of telling the worst stories. I got a ransomware attack last year at my family factory, and I'm
Yeah.
happy to talk about it because there's a stigma to it that no one wants to admit that they weren't perfect. So if I can relieve that by being an example, I will gladly do it. And that's where I think my only child syndrome comes into play because I've had to be creative and make fun of myself because I never had a co-presenter with me. So
And
I like
I
this. Both the sarcasm and the self-irony are there are things that it takes a little bit of getting used to
mm.
depending on where you're coming from.
And it's if you need to be good at humor, I think self-deprecation, you have to be very comfortable at self-deprecation,
Mm,
and you also have to be really comfortable at addressing the elephant in the room. I guess it's
mm,
based on my observation. So you can't just, if you have a really bad joke, you have to address the joke and then move forward, or you just can't skip the joke and then leave it out for the audience just to be like so uncomfortable. Is what I've observed in my
mm,
in my experience. But just to touch upon the point of China, wherein you said that people don't ask questions because they don't want instructors to feel bad. I've also I come from India, wherein we don't ask a lot of questions to the instructor because we respect instructors a lot,
mm,
and it's also because of if we ask something offensive or if we ask
mm,
something that is like a good question, but the instructor might feel offensive,
mm,
then you're out of the class. Like that's how the education system
mm.
was
Yeah.
brought. Like I was brought up in such kind of education that we are scared of instructors, and
Mm,
there's a hint of respect slash hint of being scared.
yeah.
And that's why sometimes people are silent when coming from eastern side of the world, is my observation. But moving to um, one of my favorite videos that I've seen on your website or on Winfu was the shortcut video of how to open command prompt administrative rights within like few seconds. But it is I have a follow up line for that, and I've met a lot of Windows or not Windows, but I've met a lot of IT experts who absolutely despise the mouse. The keyboard is their home. Shortcuts are like their bread and butter, and before you know, they are just in deep in the registry doing something. And while I'm trying to search, where is control panel? So I have met those people. It honestly for me, it's like terrifying to watch when people are just like so good at their keyboards that I am scared to ask questions because I know that the more like the expert you are in the keyboard, you are very technically sound in your head. It's just my personal bias, but have you come across or do you have similar biases wherein when you see a person like extremely good at the keyboard, you know that this person is good?
Well, yes, I think so. I mean, for me, it more comes down to um, people that are when I choose to do something. I know I'm normally totally fine by doing something with the GUI.
Mm,
I always say that I'm okay for doing it 1 or 2 times, but if it needs to be automated and it's repetition and it's like this bulk job that should not be done by a human, then I want to automate it with, for example, PowerShell. So today, this morning, I started a class here in Vienna, and in the beginning of the class, I need to reset like 25 users' accounts and I need to reset 25 virtual computers. Now, I do that every week. So if I would have to do it once, I could still click through it. There's no problem for me. But if I need to do it every week, then I understand that there's a benefit for me to take a few hours to automate it because I have to repeat it all the time. So
mm,
repetition or volume will make me go on the keyboard and automation side even more. I use both all the time. I'm not the handiest on the keyboard when it comes to writing, for example. I've never been to school to learn like write with all your type. I write with like, let's say maybe like 4 to 6 fingers. So I don't know how to typewrite like in the old style, as a few of my friends. For me, I see it mostly so that if I see someone that for a relatively trivial task with a mouse would still opt in for doing it with PowerShell, for example,
Mm,
it does tell me a little bit on the fact that they are not the average IT user, because the average IT user would always usually choose the graphical way of doing things. So I think it's more, in my world, it's more like GUI versus PowerShell, which is the same phenomena. And I always tell everyone, like I was grown up with like old batch files. I'm not a developer. I'm not a definite. I always tell my students, when my students are like, "Can't you just do that with PowerShell?" I'm saying, "Probably you can. So
mm,
go ahead." There's like, you don't have to mimic my old habits.
mm,
But for me, it takes a little bit of always, if I want to learn some, like I always tell people when they ask me, like, do you find it difficult to learn PowerShell? I was like, no, I find it difficult to unlearn the old command prompt because I grew up with it. And as long as I can do things with it, I'm human. I will do it the way I know rather than learn a new thing unless I have some other motivation for it. But now, of course,
mm,
nowadays I have to learn all the time because we are going, which is really weird. In Linux world, it was kind of the opposite. Everyone grew up with just using command interpreters, and then you at later stage got like a GUI X Windows system on it. And we in the Windows world, we grew up with the mouse and keyboard and click on things. And only now we're going more and more towards actually typing things because we have so much more scale. If you have to manage, like I might have to reset. I have sometimes 80 people in my class, biggest ones, and they might have 4 virtual machines. That's 320 devices to manage in the morning. Definitely can't do that with a mouse anymore.
yes, and I personally did try to learn PowerShell. I think it's very good in terms of its scalability, but I don't have more problems. Like you said, you had to reset 25 users' machines. I don't
Hmm.
get that on an everyday basis. So it's a bit of a rusty thing in my head, but it's a very
Yeah.
good tool to use. And I also heard some interviews from Snower. Yeah, excellent. Early days, 1998, 99, when he was like someone interviewed him when he was in the Microsoft world, and he was really good. And I was so happy to like listen to those talks, the old days talks, wherein people are like just coming up with these new things like PowerShell, and that has changed the whole world. Now I think that everything in Azure cloud and things moving towards cloud, will you have to learn PowerShell. But I'm not an expert in it. So what I want to touch upon here uh, is the shortcut, where like
Hmm.
when I saw your video on the administrative rights, like how to quickly open up the prompt, the command prompt with administrative rights. It was like I did some show off in my office, but nobody cared. They were like, we already know about it. Like,
It's
don't
very
don't try
nerdy.
to show it off. But for me, it was like a big thing. Um, but this what fascinated me was the name of your website, Winfu.
Hmm.
It's something related to martial arts, and I have been practicing martial arts for a few years. I'm not very good at it. Is the name Winfu because you have learned martial arts in your journey while growing up, and does that reflect in this name?
Yeah, it does. I was always I've done like karate when I was a very young boy, and then when I was in my early adulthood, I did kung fu. So it does totally relate to that. There's really a little bit of a branding story to this as well. So
Mm,
there's it does come from the kung fu stuff in that sense that I've always been a huge fan of anything related to like ninjas or samurais or whatever. So I mean that's always been my thing. I just went to like 2 years, 3 years ago. We went to Tokyo with my son, and we went to a ninja school, and I was like, I was 43, and I was like just jumping off out of joy everywhere because I got to my first ever ninja school. So I do love that, but there's a very good learning point to this as well. So I started to try and get to a global position more as a speaker. So I tried to apply to Microsoft Tech Ed in US early, like 2010, 11, 12, and I tried multiple years to get in. and I couldn't. I would never get accepted for the call for speakers or call for sessions. And then I met one of the best speakers I've ever known, Mark Minasi, who retired a few years ago. And I met Mark in a lobby bar somewhere. I don't even remember where we met back then. But I asked him, like, why can't I get in? I have this really cool session that was called Troubleshooting Windows 8.1, and no one would accept it. I couldn't get it anywhere. And Mark looked through my stuff and he was like, Sammy, you have a really good show. You have really good material. You're technically really good, but oh boy, do your titles suck. And I was like, look, what do you mean? Like, you can't get into a show like this in US with a title like Troubleshooting Windows 8.1. You can only get in if it has like ninja, kung fu, Star Wars, or like you have to put something, and it's best if it's something related with ninja stuff, then it will be the best. And then I, I kid you not, the next year I put the same proposal, but I changed the name of the title to be Black Belt Troubleshooting Windows 8.1, and I got in instantly. So in a way that also kind of that led me in to where I am now. And in a way, I mean, that kind of also affected, like it stuck to me. It was like, hey, this is kind of like this, whether I want it or not, this became
Mm,
my brand with the
mm,
black belt.
mm,
So then when I had the black belt brand, then it kind of just made perfect sense because my company is called Adminize and my domain forever has been adminize.com. But I
mm.
created WinFu as a separate branch of that, but also because it was just so much sexier than Adminize. So it has branding to it as well.
While learning, like I myself, I'm learning Bujutsu. It's a form of
Mm,
martial arts. It's
yeah.
what ninjas, I don't know if ninjas did that actually, but my teacher is like really good. And
Mm.
he's teaching us this form of Bujutsu. And while learning that, I'm like really fascinated about how ninjas use different types of equipments, how they use sword, and I'm also a big fan of ninja. Never been to Japan, but I would also be jumping if I attend those events. Um, I wanted to go somewhere with this, but I lost my train of thoughts.
And
Anyways,
if you like the equipment and stuff like that. So we went to, as I said, we went to Tokyo. This was just this we were there actually when the previous prime minister was shot. So it's like
okay,
about just the end of COVID. So
okay,
COVID restrictions had been lifted everywhere else already, but in Japan they were still in place, and it was a really, really hard time for us to get into the country.
mm,
And then my son wanted to buy a katana blade, so he wanted a sword, and we went to the airport, and we had the
mm,
katana with us. And if you want a real katana, you have to have a permit for it. So this was just a fake toy katana. But when
mm,
you go to the airport, you have to like report it that we
mm,
are we have a katana, and that started this huge process there. And this they said that okay, the official inspector will come here and they will
mm,
inspect your weapon so that you are
mm,
allowed to take it to the airplane. And there was this real ritual going on. So this guy comes in and he's like wearing this military uniform with all sorts of medals and everything, and he comes there and like everyone is just nodding and like super important. And then he came to us and then he just like looks at the sword and then he just suddenly goes and from his pocket he took like a fridge magnet, like a butterfly um, butterfly looking like a magnet that you would put on a fridge. He took it and then he tried the blade like, all good,
okay,
and then let us go. So Mr.
wow,
Inspector was actually equipped with this butterfly magnet that he used to inspect our katana. But as it's not, so it can't be, they have to verify that they're not real.
interesting.
But that was, we went and shooting stars and all that stuff in the ninja school. Awesome.
That's an interesting way of doing a quality assessment check. I have to read about it, but I gathered my train of thought. What I wanted to
Hmm.
talk about was certifications. We have this in IT world. We have this piece of paper that is given to people when they achieve something. And in martial arts, you are given this very ceremonial belt, which you have to
Mm-hmm.
tie around and bow next to sensei. It's like a big ritual that happens when you get elevated from, like, let's say, one belt to another belt, or when you get your
Mm-hmm.
black belt, for example. Why can't IT embrace this? Because of the point that you said, people like ninja, people like black belt, people like stuff like this. But why can't, when someone get a knowledge upgrade, they get a
Mm.
belt like the martial arts, which if it was the case, I would be like trying my best to go for the black belt so that I can just wear it or whatever I do and then
I
show
know.
off my skills.
And I mean, it's a little bit of a joke, but in a way, I've always been half serious about this. I've always said that I want to make these pins that you get for, like, when you meet me somewhere and you can
Mm,
verify that you haven't used admin rights to log into your machine, you would get these like yearly pins, like anonymous alcoholics get these like 5 years
mm,
pin, so that I could be giving those out to people like, you have now successfully survived without admin rights for 17 years already. You get this new pin. I mean, I think awarding people, but honestly, there's a point to it because I mean, we are motivated. Companies are motivated by money in a way. That if we get certifications, they can sell us more. But if you motivate people, people are very different. That's why I teach a lot of these. I actually, when I won Ignite 2018 for the best session award, the session was actually called how to build a conference winning session.
mm,
So it was more about presentation skills and stuff like that.
mm.
And one thing that I always tell people is that, like, you teach enough technology to make the company happy that they sent the person to the conference, because they send the people to the conference to learn new things that they can deploy to their customers or in their own environment. But if you want
Mm.
to win over like people's hearts, that has to be something personal. Like
Yeah,
I've always seen it. If I tell people that with this way you can more easily manage your 10,000 BitLocker recovery keys, great for a company. But if I tell people that this is a way how you can use a VPN to get an easier access to your parents' house where you would have to all the time drive into to help them with their IT stuff, that's personal gain. And that wins people over, which is totally different thing. People are not Companies look at it by investing money certain amount, so they need some return on investment. But it's not
yeah.
the people's, very, very rarely it's the people's money. It's their company that pays it. So it's not the money thing. You have to motivate people with other things. And getting a belt, for example, that that motivates most people a lot more than
I would be
something else.
I would be super motivated if there
Yeah.
was this belt system, because in my head right now, I want to go and achieve the black belt, at least when I'm doing the martial arts.
Mhm.
Because when you see someone wear the black belt, all of a sudden you have respect. You are
Yes.
like, you bow down to people that, because they have had that discipline, they have gone through the course rigorously and they've achieved that black belt, right? And that
Mhm.
symbolizes something. But I mean, a piece of paper can do that, but it is not, for me, it is not very motivational. Like, I achieved my CISSP and I worked
Mm.
my ass off for it. I can say that it's my podcast. I worked my ass off for it. Uh, but when I got the piece of paper, I was like, I wish I had got like a something that I meant, like it meant more to me. Like when I just got that you have cleared the exam, that meant a lot to me. But when I got that piece of paper, I was like, I wish I had got something better out of it. And that's why maybe someone, there's a business opportunity here, I guess.
Mm.
Through this podcast, someone can listen and maybe start this movement.
And there is a same thing happens with the MVP stuff. I mean, I get a I get an official like certificate that I'm an MVP for a certain year, but that I don't even remember where they are at my house. But you get this kind of a statue, the
Mm,
class statue where you put in yearly rings. Every year they send you this small ring that you can
mm,
attach on top of the tower. So you build like a tower. And then when you
wow.
get your 5 years filled, you get a 5 year ring, which is different color. And then 10 years and 50. I just got my 15th. And I mean, those are a big reason why I keep wanting that. I want to build that tower. There's one guy in Finland who is Panu Saukko. He's like an SCCM Intune MVP, whatever they're called nowadays. But anyway, but he's been an MVP for like 5 years more than I have,
Mm,
and like he's a little bit older than I am, so maybe he retires and I have the chance to actually get to that like in front of him one day. But this is exactly the same thing that you're talking about. I will. That is a price, and every year
mm,
I have a goal, and it keeps still. It's every year it's better and better and better because it grows and it's higher. The tower is higher than someone else's. I mean, it's a competitive thing for me,
mm.
but the paid piece of paper saying Bill Gates or Satya Nadella has signed your MVP ever. Honestly, I hope I didn't like put them in the trash bin. I hope I really saved them. But that building block is like building a Lego higher than anyone else. I love that price.
Now that we are in this topic of MVP, how
Mhm.
does one become one? Like, is there a journey or is there a pathway wherein one can become a Microsoft Value Professional?
I think there's a few very concrete points to this. One is that what
Okay.
everyone should understand is that MVP is in no way a technical certification. So there is no technical path of becoming an MVP. There's no requirements for certification. Um, MVP is only about you being willing to share your knowledge for free to wider audiences. So that's the only measurement. You can become an MVP. Some people are MVPs because they respond very heavily on the answers.microsoft.com forums, for example. So
Wow.
they put their time, they're not paid, they put their time into responding to people's questions. There are people who get an MVP for doing stuff like I do, which is public speaking and telling people about Microsoft technologies for very big audiences. There are people who get the MVP for doing a podcast. There are people who get that to be an MVP because they wrote a book. It's about reach. So Microsoft measures a lot of the stuff with reach. So, of course, if you
Wow.
wrote a blog that 10 people read, that's probably not considered very big sharing. But if you speak for a user group meeting, for example, constantly, you get to 100 people there, you don't get paid for it. And that is one very important thing that people should remember about the MVP program. You cannot get a contribution for paid work.
Mhm.
So MVP is not about paid things. MVP is about you volunteering to share your knowledge. But you can. So if you have no public speaking background, then user groups, very good place to start. Um, if you have a blog, that's one way. So if you have a blog and you can gather people, if you have a YouTube or a TikTok channel
What
that
about
people watch,
what about channels like Reddit, Substack, things like those?
well,
Would that also?
that would count as well. If you
Okay.
are giving value to people who are looking for help, absolutely. There's no there's no forced format in which you have to deliver your content in, but
Okay.
you but it's just about sharing knowledge.
Interesting. And this is very interesting because I myself did not know about it. And I was
Mm.
curious, like how does Microsoft award people MVP? Is there like in my head, it's like a certification. Like when
Yeah,
I did some research about it afterwards, but initially the thought was, I want to do that. Is there a course? I will take it. That's
yeah,
like the
exactly.
initial thought,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah,
then when I read about it, or at least I didn't know about the spreading of the knowledge part and being
mm.
volunteer for Microsoft. That's an interesting point, and hopefully, people listening out there can gain meaning out of it and start spreading more. Um, with with that, I want to move to another point,
Hmm.
and that is you talk about you travel a lot. You say 200 days in a year you travel, right?
Mm.
Um, have you had any experiences when you stay in the hotel, like when you travel you
Hmm.
stay in the hotel, have you had any experiences where you stayed in a hotel and their IT setup was so bad that you had to go to their reception and say, I want to hold a training right now for you guys free of cost?
I have. I actually even I used this as an example back in
Okay.
2015, I think. I won TechEd US, I guess, for the first time with a session called Black Belt Securing Windows 10 or something like
Mm,
that. And so this
nice.
happened actually in Oslo. I travel quite a lot to Norway, and I
Mm,
was in Oslo and I went into my hotel, and this was not really about technical stuff, but security in general. So I went in and I went upstairs and I got my key and I tried to open my door and it didn't work. And I went
mm,
down for like 16 floors or something, like a long way down with the elevator. Told them, hey, my key doesn't work. Okay, they gave me another one. I went up again and it still didn't work. It's like, okay, a little bit annoying already, but like I'm a seasoned traveler, things happen. I'm not very easily, I don't get angry or stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, fair enough, let's go down. And I went down and I said, hey, it's still not working. Like, okay, well, it's probably the lock. So the lock needs, these old locks, they need charging. So
mm,
he doesn't want me to go up again and try it out. He comes with me and he brings a charger with me. And it's like basically, it looks like the key card, but it has like a big battery attached to it. And they just stick it into the lock and it charges. And he comes in and he charges the lock, tries my key, and it still doesn't work. Like, okay, well, we don't want you to come down again and get another one because apparently there's something wrong. And then he said, I'll let you in with my key and let you get settled. You can your unpack and whatever. And later on in the evening, please then come downstairs and get a new key. So he lets me in, and I paid notice that he had like a plastic key, and mine was made of wood. So mine was a little
mm,
bit thinner, and his was a little bit thicker, different material. So he opens the door, lets me in, I get settled, and then at just before midnight, I decided that, okay, now I have to go down and get the new key. I went down, I got a new key, I went up, and it still didn't work. And I was like, now I was getting a little bit agitated. I'm like, oh. When I get to bed, I went down. There was this young girl who was at the lobby,
mm,
the receptionist, and she had a lot of people. She was in a lot of hurry there. There was a lot of people, a lot of traffic. And I went to her and I said, hey, it still doesn't work. But you know what? I'm relatively sure it's a contact issue because your colleague had a plastic key and it works just fine, but the wooden one will not work.
mm.
So could you please make me a key like before, but make it out of plastic? Okay, I will check it out if that's possible. Then she went to the back room, took a while, and then she came back, gave me a plastic key, and whispered to me saying, just don't tell anyone because it works on all doors. So she actually gave me a master key for the whole freaking hotel. So I'm like, okay. I went
Wow.
upstairs. I went upstairs and I sent an email to the country lead of this hotel chain. It was a big chain. And I sent an email saying, I think I'm in possession of something I should not be, and took a selfie of me and the master key, just sent it to her and said that, like, you're very lucky that it was me. I work in security. I'm a good guy. So, like, you got very lucky with this. Then it took like maybe 30 minutes. And then someone from their security department came to my door and it's like, I guess you're in possession of something you should not be. And I gave it to them. And in the morning, then we had a meeting. I said, I want to meet your manager. And then we had like this briefing in the next morning about how this had happened, and a good lesson here. It wasn't really only the girl's problem, because security is always, you build layer on top of layer. It's like an onion, you peel layer by layer. So yes, she definitely made a big mistake giving me a master key, but the hotel was under renovation. And every night when renovation crew is getting out, the manager on duty is supposed to take the key and wipe it so that no one can accidentally use it for anything. But it had not been wiped, and it had been left on the table in the back room so that she could pick it up and give it to me. So there was actually failures happening in the chain in many different
Mm.
levels.
But
But
it's
I do, and
also
technically it's more like the stuff that I just, like, Wi-Fi is so bad that I have to go and tell them that the channels are wrong that they're using. Like, switch my channels to something else because I'm competing with all my neighbors with the same channels, and this will never work. So yes, there's like, but it's usually related more to tech, like networking, because I'm of course very reliant on networking. I'm in this Radisson. This is my 52nd night in this same hotel this year in Vienna. So I watch Netflix and local news from Finland. They're all coming over internet nowadays. And then I work a lot. I do these podcasts with you. I mean, we need internet for everything. So usually I'm only complaining about the more of the network side, not
mm,
that much otherwise. Or then these ridiculous like physical security stuff. That, or I was just in a bank. I was doing a presentation for a big bank in Finland, and I went there. And in the morning, I'm supposed to be in front of their auditorium to speak about security. And the morning starts so that I came from the garage from an elevator. I popped in there and I called my contact, like, can you come and pick me up? I'm in the lobby. And then I see him going to the actual lobby and he's trying to find me. And then I'm just like on the phone, I'm like, hey, I'm behind you here. And he's like, how are you here? I was like, what do you mean? This is the secure side. You're not supposed to be able to be on this side. You're supposed to be in the lobby. I was like, well, I came through the elevator. I just apparently tailgated myself in with no intention of doing so. But it kind of like the day started with a penetration test that I didn't want to do, but I ended up on the wrong side. So just like a perfect, of course, made a perfect start for the presentation then, because it's like start by telling you that I have a key card here, which I should not have because I actually came through the wrong door and someone let me in without asking who I am. And it is a bank. So I think they should take this seriously.
Yeah. But it also reflects on many, like you have reflected on many points.
Hmm,
One of the point being the weakest link in the security is humans. Like humans make stupid mistakes, which can trigger into massive security breaches or massive security incidents, like the one that you just explained about physical keycard that
hmm,
you got, like the master access to the whole hotel. Like I feel that one of the mistakes could be education, because the person in the reception was not educated enough to know the impact what this could have on the brand or on the
hmm,
hotel image.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And the second point is that why should she have access to the Mastercard, like principle of least privilege? Should she have the access to that card? Like things like these I think should be educated. But I think over the last 5 6 years, security has been like focus across the world. So there has been a lot of education given to people. I don't know if that has reduced the incidents. I don't have the data with me, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of educations given, at least in the corporate side of the world, wherein people are educated about phishing and educated about good things and bad things and what to do and what not to do. So hopefully in the future, stupidity reduces, but any humans are the weakest link. So you can't
I would say
say,
I always say that like uneducated people are many times the weakest link.
uh,
I don't want to generalize that people are the weakest link in security, but of course I'm a teacher by heart, so it kind of
uh,
like it always I feel that I need to educate them more. And now we get back to your first point that we talked about, because how do you think if I don't know if I've ever heard any enterprise employee saying that he can't wait for the next security webinar to be there. I mean, you have this, you're forced to look through these, read through these slideshows or watch videos, but you're forced to do it. So what if someone would just make them more entertaining so that you would be like every week waiting for the same way as you wait for a comedy show on TV or a good podcast, you can't wait for the next episode. What if someone would just invest in those, making them so much more entertaining that the people would actually be waiting to be educated?
I think you are on the right track, and there are a huge audience who follow you for your humor and also for the knowledge. It's like a very
Mm,
good blend,
mm,
and one of the person is me. Um, I want to slightly deviate from this topic
mm.
and talk into something that I have reflected on my personal journey, and let me give a premise to it. You are one of the 100 most influential people in IT in Finland,
Mm,
at least what I've read.
yep.
You are a Microsoft MVP. You are you have a lot of accolades in you,
Mm,
and in cybersecurity, at least in my knowledge, intelligence often becomes identity, and then that intelligence, once it becomes an identity, it often turns into becoming an ego.
mhm.
How do you manage the egoistic side of yourself when someone who is not as much invested into security points at something to you saying this could be done in a better way? Has it
Mm.
does it hurt your ego, or would you feel like I'll slap the shit out of you? I know more than you. Don't say things to me. But they might be right. Have you encountered such things that
I
has hurt
have,
your
and
ego?
I have, and I think it took me like 25 years in this business to actually understand. I used to be, as I said earlier, I used to be one of those that I needed to be like top notch. I needed to be the smartest person or technically smartest person in the room. I needed that. I didn't want to go. When I'm originally a scuba diving instructor, and when I started scuba diving, for example, when I figured out that I love it, I went through all the courses to become a scuba diving instructor because I need to be like I can't stand the fact that there's someone who's more qualified in this than I am. But then when I turned 40, I made like some life-changing decisions in many ways. I stopped drinking completely, and at the same time, I also figured out for the first time I felt that I would actually be okay in hiring people that are smarter than me. So I now have 2 employees. I used to work 25 years solo. I never had anyone working for me. Now I have 2 employees because now I can. But it took me a very long time. When I was 40, I suddenly understood what everyone had told me for decades, which was that if you're like really smart, the most important thing is to just find people that are even smarter than you and hire them. But I didn't like that did not work for me at all. I couldn't tolerate that I would hire someone who would be smarter than me. It took, as I said, like 25 years of this. But I also started with a very weird situation in all of this because I was 16 years old when I was a domain admin for PepsiCo for like 40,000 computers. There were very few people who would be at this point before turning 18. I made a lot of money when I was in high school. I was always the one who was very successful, and I was always the one who was hosting all the parties because I had capital to do that. And it kind of like it that just stayed there a little bit too much because it would have been smarter to already earlier in my career to understand to team up with
Mhm.
people that are same or even better. And now I get this all the time. When I started teaching, I was 20 and my students were average 40. And if you have a 20, if I look at my son now, who's 18, and he would be standing in front of a classroom telling me how Windows Intune actually works, I get it. It's not very easy to
Yeah,
take it in. And
yeah,
so now I understand it because I was 20 and I was there. I was very passionate and I was a good instructor, yes, but like me just saying like, honestly, take it from me. I know how Active Directory works. This is how you should do it. It was like, oh my God, like that must have been really difficult for people to, you don't have the authority. It's, if you're 20 against a 40, it shows. So,
yeah.
so I was like always in this weird situation. I had to be really, really good technically because I was faced with customers that were twice my age.
Mm.
So
And
now it's also changed. I have my students now that are 20, and
mm,
many times they will come to me and say, like, some of you do understand that we nowadays do it in a different way. And then I just have to, it does hurt.
yeah.
I have a story about this. I always share it. I tell people I call this the dreaded student hand moment. That's the time when you're in front of a classroom and you say things like, well, it is not technically possible to do this. And then one hand instantly raises up in the audience and you already know that you're wrong because someone had their like instantly when you said it, it's not possible. You know that they're gonna point out how it is possible, and then you just
Yeah.
have to suck it in. You're just like, okay, so please tell me. Well, actually, if you just type in like run DLL32 print UI blah 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 blah, you could actually do it. And then I'm always saying like, you're paying a lot for my training. So I have to say thank you. Although I would love to just rip your head off because I'm so annoyed that you knew it and I didn't. But we'll just take a break. Let me calm down a bit and we can continue. So
No,
just suck it
that's
in.
I've also heard about that, but in my personal life, I could reflect on what you are saying completely. And that when I reflected on it, what I thought was that I'm a single child and I was brought up with all the love and pamper and
Hmm.
did not learn the concept of sharing quite in the when I was growing up, and that reflected when I started my IT journey. Hated sharing work. I need to do everything, and I'll figure out everything, and I'll solve everything. I'll work 24 hours, but I'm not going to delegate it. And understanding the delegation took a lot of time for me, and now I've reflected on it and I've understood. But it hurts a lot when you don't understand that why I need to delegate it. But once you understand that it's good for you, then things will start falling into its places. But that's my journey, being a single kid.
But we're the exact same. We're the exact same. I have the exact same issue with myself. Everyone wants me to go to US for MMS. That's a management summit, and everyone wants me to speak there. I can't because they only allow speakers that have a co-speaker. I
Oh,
can't do that. I honestly can't. I mean, I love the stage. I love the big stage. I love presenting, but I I don't know how to do it with someone else. So that's the only reason why I haven't been there is because they don't allow single speakers. You always have to be a duo. So
no,
I know
it
very well what
makes
you're talking about.
it makes sense. Moving slightly to the domain that you love about Windows. Um, if you were to choose an era of Windows that you want to relive, and an era that you want to forget about, what would that be?
Hmm. I wish Windows Vista would have never happened. That probably it they made so good. I mean they made really good effort in it, and they totally messed it up just by they just messed it up because of licensing. They had to push Vista out even when it didn't work.
Mm,
I'm always trying to explain to people that you have to understand that back then Microsoft still had a department called QA, so quality assurance, and if there's 1,400 professional testers working for a company, so there's 1,400 people whose job is to know if things work or not. You can't assume that 1,400 people really thought that Vista worked. I mean,
wow.
honestly, every one of us would have like started it for the first time, and it was such a horrible thing. So it can't be that 1,400 professional testers were like, "Oh, this is so good. Let's just publish this. This is smooth and nice and fast." So I wish that would have never happened.
Mm,
If I would get to relive something, then I would say that from a Windows perspective, I think that there was something correct done with Windows 7. It, that was a point where Microsoft has had just again successfully merged the server and client versions. Server 2008 R2 and Windows 7, they were synced compared to Vista and Server 2008 that were separated. It was very simplistic, but very nice to work. And at the end of its era, it was very, very uh, trouble free. It was a
mm,
fast, nice operating system, and we had very good quality of updates coming into it.
mm,
But then, like after that, there was a very long downfall with the Windows 8, 8.1 touch based stuff. Microsoft had to fire their to be CEO, Steven Sinofsky, to get the start menu back because people wanted the start menu back and not the touch based OS that Windows 8 and Server 2012 era were.
mm,
Everything went, then it was like quite okay for again with Windows 10, but the quality went down a lot because I urge people to patch fast, so patch more and test less, but it's very complicated nowadays because the quality is so bad. That's a bad decision from 2014 when Microsoft fired the QA team, so they
mm.
actually got rid of quality assurance team. So
But
if we could get back to the end of Windows 7 and somehow just make that better. Or one more thing I have to add is that we should honestly go back to 1989 when they started designing NT, because between 1989 and 1993 when they developed NT 3.1, we
mm,
still today can't use the CPU, or the CPU has these different rings that could be used. There's 4 of them, but we can only use 2 because of US government requiring NT to work with alpha processors. So if we could go back in time to 1993 and say to US government that alpha will never be successful, so we don't have to base the whole Windows platform on the assumption that you used for alpha, I would be really happy to change the history.
Yeah, that's some serious insights that you've given. Because I myself have no idea about the 98 part, and the recent one that you just explained. Like, I was born in 91. So yeah, I had, and people who are born like in 2021, understanding that history, like how it all began to how it is right now, is very important. But understanding that without reliving that era, I don't know how it will be.
Mm.
Um, One quick question. This is based on my personal frustration. Why do we still have Task Manager? Why is there not something smart like Process Explorer or something that can do something powerful?
I
Um,
I think we have to look at this from a few different perspectives. So one
mm,
is that we can't keep Process Explorer for a standard end user who uses a Windows machine to do net banking and play some games at home. Process Explorer would be too complicated as a view. What I do not understand is why now normally Task Manager it starts with the simple view. So why can't we just do it so that you have the simple view and then if you click the details button, then it opens Process Explorer. That would be my recommendation. Process Explorer is a weird piece of application inside of Microsoft. Again, going back to history. So that's Process Explorer is built by Mark Russinovich and Bryce Coxwell, who had a company called Winternals that they sold to Microsoft in 2006. And Mark and Price didn't want to sell the company unless Microsoft made a promise that sysinternals will be free forever. Now, Microsoft said, yes, we will allow people to still download sysinternals tools for free, but they will not have a product group, which means there's no official like testing for it. There's also no official support for it. So I think there's a lot of like old politics and stuff like that in play as well that they can't just like incorporate it into Windows because they've made this like ancient 20-year-old deal that Process Explorer will never be a real Microsoft product. It's this one we are giving out for free and we had to take it because of the deal and all this. So I think there's a little bit more than technology involved in this. So
but it's a very good tool to have, especially when things are stuck and you don't know what to do. Um, and yeah, Mark Russinovich, I follow him. Um, but do you look up to some people in Microsoft, and do you have like do you have like a fanboy moment when you
yeah.
see some people in Microsoft? Do you have any
I'm
names?
I've met Mark. I've known him for so long that that doesn't really happen that much with Mark anymore. But I did send him. I just today actually I just posted on Twitter and Blue Sky that I won the best speaker at the Nordic Infrastructure Conference in Oslo,
All
and
right.
Mark Rusinovich was supposed to be doing the keynote, but he couldn't come. So I went to kind of be the backup Mark, which I would gladly be anytime. So I sent him an email saying that I thank him for not making the trip to Oslo, so I get to win the conference. Um, Mark is one of those people. I went to his class back in 2005 when he was not at Microsoft yet. So he was teaching Windows internals. I waited for years to get to that class. I've always looked up to him. People often ask me what's the difference. I used to have a joke. I would always, when I went to US and no one knew who I was, I printed out business cards and I made I chose my title to be Senior Technical Fellow because Mark Rusinovich was only a technical fellow. So then I gave them out and I showed it on my sessions and people started talking on the corridors like, who's this young guy from Finland? He's already a senior technical fellow and Mark Rusinovich is only a technical fellow. And it ended up, even Mark knew it. Like next year he said that I'm now the CTO of Azure. Sami, maybe you should upgrade your title. So someone told it to him as well. But I, people ask me what's the difference, and I always say the biggest difference here is that Mark is a professional developer. I'm not. So that is the I I was present in Amsterdam when Mark Rusinovich built Zoomit, which is the presentation tool from sysinternals, which is one of the most downloaded tools of the freaking whole Microsoft company. And he built it because one of my co-attendees in the class was complaining that he was using a tool against license restrictions. And then he went back to the hotel, came back the next day and launched Zoom it and just responded like, I developed this last night at the hotel. Are you fine with this? So I
Wow.
mean, he's a professional developer. I'm not. So that's the big difference there. But I look up to Mark. I do look up to Jeffrey Snower as well. Like you mentioned, I have made the biggest mistake in my life, which will haunt me, and I still have nightmares of it. But this was the time when Snowden was a name that was not that good when it came to this different person. So when I had Jeffrey Snower in Finland,
Mm.
I introduced him as Mrs. Snowden. So
Oh
I
my
missed the
God.
last name and I missed the pronouns because in Finnish language there are no pronouns. We don't have he and
Ah, okay.
she. So it's very
Okay.
difficult for me always. So I messed it I double messed it up because I said Mrs. Snowden. But
Yeah.
Jeffrey is one of those. Mark Minasi and Jeremy Moscovich easily for presentation skills. They are superb. And we have there if I would meet Bill Gates somewhere, I would be a total fanboy. I mean, I would probably I don't know what I would do. Or Dave Cutler. I've never shaken hands with Dave Cutler. I've seen him a few times, but
Would you
I've never
would you
shaken hands
point
with
his
him.
mistakes about Bowser and browser?
I don't know if I could. That's exactly what you're talking about here, which is the starstruck thing. That now, if you ask me, I could easily tell you that, of course, I would. I would just sit down with him and point out that there's these stupid typos in Windows. And then the reality is, I would probably just faint and like.
No, but
But yes, of course,
it's
and
also
security side a lot, especially Finnish. Mikko Hyppönen from Finland would easily be. I don't remember if I've ever been as nervous as I was when I realized for the first time that I was doing a presentation in a security conference and I realized that Mikko Hyppönen was sitting in the front row. Like totally, it went out, it was fine, but I mean, I remember the feeling I had of like, oh my God, like the last time I felt like this was the first time I was on stage in like 2005 or something.
no, it's I can understand that because for me, meeting you is also something of that moment, like you meeting Mark Rasanovich, or it's super nervous because you see them, like from my eyes, you see them as a public figure,
Hmm.
and you are there, you're giving speeches, you're giving talks, and then all of a sudden you get to meet, and then you're like, what do I talk? I should not be sounding stupid, and then the first word you come out of your mouth is something stupid, and then it all goes downhill from there. No, but I think I've enjoyed the discussion right now with you. It's been like an hour. I couldn't realize that it's been an hour. I loved all the points. Obviously, I've not gone deeper into any technical details because I am not that smart to talk about it. So that's why, for any people out there who are like cursing me that you missed an opportunity not to ask technical stuff, I am sorry because I am not technically sound enough to ask those questions and hold the conversation for on a technical level. So I deliberately chose not to. I just like touched on things that I know a bit about, like Task Manager, uh, or Process Explorer. But it has been an awesome 1 hour, at least from my eyes, to talk to you and ask all these questions. So thanks.
I actually love it this way. I mean, I think honestly, technical stuff you can read online or you can watch them on a video or something. I think the podcasts like are even more valuable if you actually get to share things like the things that we've talked about today, because that's something that's you can only get it in a conversation. technical technic Technology is still technologies. At the end of the day, it's ones and zeros in a certain order. But when you talk about like how do you see other people or how you feel about your country or different cultures and stuff like that, that would never be shown in a technical content. So I think this is better this way. I love it. I was given a time when I was speaking on a cruise ship 2 weeks ago, and I had 45 minutes for my session. But then one guy he had canceled the talk, and they just said, "Well, you can just talk as long as you have this like content." And I spoke for 90 minutes. So, so, so,
No,
so I will. I love this. I'm super happy that you had me.
And I'm really happy that I have like a celebrity like you. And how do you say thank you in Finnish?
Kiitos.
Kiitos,
Yes.
kiitos, Sami.